Hello and welcome to episode 50 of Mathghamhain Morsels. This is again going to be in the Merry Meals series. And one of the things that is almost a quintessential skill for making a lot of amazing winter food is knowing how to make a stock. So I'm going to show you guys how I make one of the stocks that I do. This one's going to be a fairly basic stock. One that is good for all kinds of different dishes. It's fairly generic in its flavor profile by design, so that it can be used in a lot of dishes. And the way that it starts off is every time that I get a chicken to break down and make into meals, I vacuum pack and then freeze the remaining carcass. So I have the carcasses of 2 chickens that I broke down a while ago. They've been pulled out of my freezer and allowed to thaw in my refrigerator for a few days. So I'm going to be using these. I have a few smoked turkey necks. I might use a couple more, but I just pulled out 2 to show them, which will add, again, some more of that amazing poultry flavor and also a bit of smokiness, but it won't be an overpowering smokiness. Then I have 1 whole onion that I've cut into eighths, about 1 head of garlic, which I've just peeled, and then a few mushrooms here. Let me make it an even 8 mushrooms. So I'm just going to be taking these, and the first step is going to be roasting them all off. So I'm going to slide the carcasses, the necks, and all these into a roasting pan. And I'm going to stick it in a 400-degree oven and let it roast for a while. This will just allow some of the flavors to bloom. It will allow a bit of the onion to sweeten. It will allow the garlic to mild out just a little bit, and you get some of that roasted garlic flavor. The mushrooms will become even earthier. The chicken carcasses will allow more of their flavor to come out than if I just boiled them straight off. And the necks will just, again, allow some of the fats and flavors to come out of the meat a little bit, which will be amazing when I actually start making the broth. So I will join you guys after these have all roasted up and they're ready to go for the next step. Okay, so here we are, the pot's boiling. I am doing this as a ADR, so that's the reason why you aren't hearing the sounds in the background as normal, and my voice is a bit cleaner. But water's boiling, so I've explained this before, I'll say it again. If it's above the ground, it goes into a boiling pot, so animals, like the chicken carcasses that I have and the turkey necks, go into an already boiling pot of water. If it goes below the ground, then it goes into cold water. So potatoes and any sort of tuber, anything like that, goes in cold water and is brought up to the boil. So throw the turkey necks and chicken carcasses in. This first boil is really just to see if any scum forms. So this isn't going to be very long. This entire thing is maybe a 5-minute boil or so. So just let it bubble away. You turn down the heat after everything goes in to a simmer, so you want to turn it down to medium low, somewhere in there, depending on your range. My burner, it tends to be a medium low for this type of pot. And I'm just going to let this go for a little bit. See if any scum forms. If scum does, then this entire pot of water is going to be dumped out. If no scum really forms, then I'm just going to be transferring this over to the pot of my pressure cooker, and I'm going to continue making the broth in the pressure cooker. With the roasting, you tend to get less scum than if you don't roast, which is why I did the roasting step. Also, it improves the flavor of everything. But every now and then, you still get some scum that rises to the surface. If you don't either do a initial boil and then just pitch the entire initial boil, or watch your stock the entire time and skim off the top, that scum muddies the taste of the broth and can absolutely ruin it if you aren't careful. But it's really easy. Like I said, you do a test boil, a test simmer, and if it's full of scum, pitch it. Sometimes, depending on how much scum, you might want to do a second test before you then transfer over to a clean pot of water with everything that you want in it. Other times, you just continue as you are. So if I were to do this on stovetop rather than in the pressure cooker, after this boil, what I would do is drain off the water if it's being binned. This one doesn't look like it's going to be. This one, in fact, doesn't end up getting drained. So what I would do is just pull out the meat of it, set the meat off to the side, let the water cool for a little bit, then I'll throw back in the mushrooms and onions and garlic, let that come back up to the boil, throw back in the meat, and then take it back down to simmer, and let it simmer away. The longer you let it simmer, the more flavor it has. But I'm going to be doing the pressure cooker, so I'm going to be putting all of this in the pressure cooker pot, effectively, and popping it on for 40 to 50 minutes of nice high heat, high pressure cooking. And it comes out with an amazing broth with a good amount of flavor. This broth doesn't have any salt, so it won't have a lot of flavor when you first taste it, but if you add just a bit of salt every time that you use it, all those flavors that are in the broth just immediately start punching, because salt, up to a certain point, is just a flavor enhancer rather than a real flavor itself. So when you salt meat, it tastes more like meat. Once you start over-salting, that's when it gets that salty taste. Up until that, it just enhances and enhances and enhances. So you will need to salt this broth in its later uses, but this means that it can be used for anything. Soups, porridges, it's fantastic. Okay, so here we are back at my desk, and as you can see, the pot of broth has just come out of my Instant Pot. It's this nice deep brown color, which it should be due to the roasted turkey, the roasted chicken, the mushrooms, and everything else that got roasted up, got those nice caramelized bits on them. So this is the color that I expected it to be. I did it 50 minutes in the pressure cooker, and it is very hot, fresh from. And then I have a setup here for straining it out. So it's one strainer over top of a bowl with a flour sackcloth towel. That's a particular type of towel. It's very similar to cheesecloth, only cheesecloth tends to be a waxed version of this, whereas the flour sack is an unwaxed version. So then I have another strainer down on top just to make it easier to catch the big bits and move them out of the way, because I will be doing that several times, and I forgot one thing, so let me just grab a bowl. I just need to grab another large bowl, because that bowl will be the carcass bowl that I'm going to use. So what I'm going to do is shift this round a bit, and I'm going to pour through my series of sieves and flour sackcloth towels. There we go, that's most of it through. Let me get this. So the sieves allow most of the large particles to be pulled out, so the bones and the bits of meat and bits of onion and garlic and mushroom. But the flour sackcloth allows the much smaller bits to be strained out, which would normally just flow straight through the sieve. And I'll just have a little bit more in the bottom of this. So, pour out the last bit of liquid, which I seem to have been able to do. Get that out, throw that back in there. Pull the flour sackcloth. So there's the top side of the flour sackcloth, and there's the underside. You'll notice that it doesn't have those little bits stuck to it, because it did its job. And then there, through the haze of steam, is the broth, and it's a lovely clear broth. Here, let me see if I can't get a bit more light in it without it just being blotted out by the steam. It's a lovely clear broth that is still very dark. Like I said, it should be very dark because of everything being roasted and all those flavors being allowed to build in it. And it is absolutely fantastic smelling. Now, I didn't throw any herbs in this. As I said, you can throw your preferred herbs in it if you so desire, or you can do it as I did, which just allows me to add any herbs to whatever dish I'm going to be making with this. And it does fantastic work keeping in the refrigerator for a decent amount of time. I'd say probably a week is the max that you want to try to keep it in the freezer. I made a good amount, so I'm going to keep a good chunk of this in the freezer, and this can keep for a good long while in the freezer. You just thaw it out, use it, refreeze if need be, or take a chunk of it, thaw that chunk out, use that, and you'll be good to go. But here, let me grab a spoon. Just so I can try to show you that this is a very clean, clear looking broth. And again, it just smells absolutely amazing. Let me give it a taste. Ooh. So, its flavor is very light at the moment, but that's just because it doesn't have salt in it, which salt, up to a certain point, just enhances all the flavors. So it tastes under-seasoned. But, again, that's something that you can adjust every time that you use it. And this will be amazing. I'm probably going to make a I'll make a video on how to make a porridge with this before too long. And you really want a low sodium broth in order to make a porridge. That way when it concentrates down, it doesn't get really salty, and you can add just enough to make it work while all those flavors really just build in the boiling off. But that's how you make a broth. It's fairly simple, fairly straightforward. So I'll leave you guys off with my standard of try something new. Remember old classics. Enjoy making food, enjoy eating your food, enjoy your life. And with that, have a good one all.